Hello there. I'm talking all things caffeine today. Caffeine has posed some major issues for me in the past, and I've had a rather tempestuous relationship with it. On one hand, I love the smell, the taste of strong black coffee, and that it initially fills me with joy, with energy, strength. And on the other hand, it impairs my sleep quality a lot. It makes me anxious, twitchy, makes my mind race and verge on paranoia. And my insanity doesn't quite end there. You know, my experience kind of oscillates greatly with prolonged consumption of caffeine. That is, the benefits outweigh the downside for a short while, but then the negative aspects sort of gather momentum and I have to stop. This then cues sort of 3 to 4 days of detox, headaches, and a sort of withdrawal that's generally unpleasant. And as I then sort of catch up with some proper deep sleep, nothing tends to mask how tired I feel. And I tell myself, you know, I'm not going to drink caffeine again until such a time has passed that I can barely recall that unpleasantness, and it's a distant memory. So I convince myself it'll be fine, and have the cheeky pot of the good stuff in the Bialetti and the stovetop, and then it's repeated the next day until this cycle perpetuates again and again. And that was what I used to be doing. You know, that's how things used to be, at least. About a year ago, I stopped drinking coffee altogether. And have not had any caffeine since then, and I feel so much better for it. And I've started a new regime that's been drawing upon a lot of things that have been going on in my world, and that go on within my professional field. And I've been really amazed with the results that I thought I would share here in a video. Firstly, let me explain how all of this came to be. A while back, I had the chance to spend some time with leading researcher on the placebo effect and hypnosis, Professor Irving Kirsch, when he came to lecture at Bournemouth University. I also got to share some research, my research with him, and get some feedback from him. And following his lecture, Irving and I walked back to the car park with a fellow student who was joining us for dinner, and mentioned that she was a bit tired. And in response to this, he asked her to create a tablet in her mind, one that was of a certain color, one that would energize her, and asked her to close her eyes and consume it right there in the car park. And when we met her at the restaurant later, she was energized. She was in great spirits and notably different as a result. The process that he guided her through was very similar, although far simpler, than a self-hypnosis process I often teach about taking hypnotic tablets, for example. When it came to caffeine, though, the additional challenge that was posed, you know, for me, was that although modern science has suggested placebo will work even when you know it's placebo, if delivered effectively, the effects of caffeine are more likely to be replicated when the placebo is delivered via deceptive administration rather than double blind. That is, if decaffeinated coffee was given to someone and they were told it was an active drug, they'd respond with measurable differences in physiology. The effects were far less notable when double blind conditions were created. That is, you know, when the participant knew they may be receiving a placebo. So, having read this paper and others, and looked for things to refute it, I knew that my own beliefs would likely now interfere with the process that I was about to self-administer, you know, with this caffeine dilemma. And all that said, with so much research around, you know, with regards to the effects of the smell of coffee, even without consumption, and also the effects of the smell of drinking it, or the smell of it when you're drinking decaf, all alongside the masses of placebo literature, it made sense to start using the placebo effect straight away. And combining it with what I know about self-hypnosis and what I would consider to be, you know, a lifelong dedication to its practice and experience and so on. So plus, as the former drug addict and author of Naked Lunch, William Burroughs once said, there isn't any feeling you can get on drugs that you can't get without drugs. So um, I, I interpret this quote as a means of highlighting the fact that we all have so much more within us that we simply do not take the time to access or learn about. If we explore, we learn that actually we can learn how to be active instead of passive within our mind. Most of the good feelings, comfort, and well-being can be found within us also. We can learn how to engage with our own mind, how to reduce pain, how to reduce anxiety, how to reduce physiological symptoms of some illnesses, and how to reduce stress, for example. The world is awash with evidence to support these statements and these applications. So in a couple of, in the last couple of years, I've run a couple of hypnosis experiential lectures. And everyone present designs their own hypnotic drugs under my instruction. And some people draw upon some former experiences. Some create completely new substances from scratch, but all within what each person considered to be ethical, and in a way that they were comfortable with, of course. So equipped with the information from the preparation, I'm using a blend of active alert hypnosis, different types of music, conditioned response, lots of laughter, motion, movement throughout. Everyone consumes their hypnotic substances, and we had some amazing responses that I'd like to think went beyond social expectations and so on. But this experiential lecture that I ran a couple of times, it was kind of pulled out of some of my experiences from the late 1990s when I used to run an event at Glastonbury. But we had some incredible outcomes for a wide number of reasons. And people really created these fabulous natural highs using imaginary drugs. I can't really do justice to what occurred, but people had some amazing experiences, and it convinced me further of what I needed to do. Use self-hypnosis, combine it with placebo science to ensure I got the positive, energizing, uplifting, enlivening effects of coffee, but at the same time, by only drinking decaffeinated coffee, duly imbibed with the hypnotic effects. And thus I'd also ensure none of the downside, none of the negative effects that I used to get from caffeinated coffee that sort of, had me on the verge of insanity sometimes, So all of this experience and this theorizing seemed to me to be good evidence of what the solution to my caffeine dilemma should be. Now, during his lectures on the placebo effect, and as I've already mentioned, Professor Irving Kirsch, as well as other placebo researchers and experts, explained that the placebo effect is still effective even when you know it is placebo. And this did bode incredibly well for my caffeine dilemma, but there was just kind of one issue additionally that I was wrangling with in my mind as I set the kind of plan in motion and was looking for strategies. The evidence for placebo effects also showed that what advanced the effects of the open placebo drugs that tended to be administered in studies was the warm manner of the individual giving them, and the way in which they were perceived as being credible and so on, and the explanation that they were powerful, and being delivered by that person. So I started to be concerned that I may not get the fullest placebo effect from my decaffeinated coffee if it was not being administered by a third party who was encouraging and who ramped up expectation and who explained it all to me. So I felt that, that naturally the self-hypnosis would help overcome this potential issue for a number of reasons. I mean, the key for me was to prepare well. Then use the same coffee making routine and adopt the hypnotic mindset established with self-hypnosis to create the effect that I was after. So that is, in line with Barber's 1960s modulating factors, a positive cognitive set in hypnosis. It can be seen as subjects who are motivated to be hypnotized, who are confident in their ability to respond, optimistic about the process, and who expect to automatically experience the responses being suggested. And people who adopt this way of thinking tend to respond better because they're in the right mindset for hypnosis. So it was key for me, especially in the absence of the warm, encouraging administrator of the placebo, to adopt this hypnotic mindset that's central and explained in my Science of Self-Hypnosis book and seminars and so on. But it also occurred to me that I can adopt the warm, authoritative manner with myself as part of the adoption of the mindset, and thus use those key elements of placebo effect research. So with all of this in mind, I put together a simple self-hypnosis process, much of which can be tweaked and flexible and changed throughout time. And I'll try and highlight those changes. And what I'll do is I'll also write up the steps and share them on the page wherever you're reading this. In brief terms, as a kind of a bit of a crib sheet that you can use to kind of follow your way through that process. So step one is seemingly obvious, but you need to know and have the outcome that you wish in mind. So you might be applying this with something quite different than the effect that I'm describing here. And if so, take the principles and the illustration that I'm offering up here and apply it to your own circumstances. I wanted to get the positive effects of caffeine, a feeling of being uplifted, energized, sharp, productive, and so on. And I drew upon previous experiences to really create a sense of the effect that I wanted. Now, I was very experienced in drinking strong coffee and was able to recall and filter the positive effects that I wanted to replicate. I think most people would be able to do that. And at this stage, just prior to starting with the more formalized hypnosis process, it's important to adopt that hypnotic mindset, a positive cognitive set, as I was explaining a little bit earlier. Somewhere on this page, wherever you're watching this video, I'll leave a link to a more comprehensive video that explains this mindset if you're not familiar with me and my work, as most of my subscribers are. And by the way, thank you for. I love you very much. Now, I want to add here that when you're starting with this process, I had the decaf coffee on the stove, all made and ready, smelling all lovely and giving off that heady scent. And this initially made it far easier to create the belief required. And later on, I removed that component because I wanted to experiment and I wished to create the feelings without the aroma and just using my mind, expectation, belief, and so on. And just kind of strip out that component part. However, if you've got it to hand, it's likely to help you in the early stages. And the evidence, the science tends to suggest that with this preparation complete, the smell will assist greatly in recreating the feelings on its own, without everything else. And we're not doing a scientific experiment necessarily here, so it doesn't matter what contributes to the effects that you're after. However, at certain stages in my own exploration, I wanted to make sure, and I wanted to see if I was capable of doing it without that foot up, so to speak. So within the steps of the process, I've done virtually every step with and without certain situations, and with and without the kind of experience of having the real coffee, the decaf coffee really there in the room, so to speak. So with your preparation complete, we commence with the hypnosis. So the second step then is that you induce hypnosis, and you can do so by any means that you desire. Or that you can use the process in my Science of Self-Hypnosis book. You can use the process recommended in my free roadmap that you can find online. You can just go Google it, or in the self-hypnosis crash course video on my YouTube channel, again, completely free. So once you've induced hypnosis, you move on to the next step. Step 3 is that you deliver the proposed placebo to yourself in a warm, expert fashion. So communicate with yourself in a way that someone with great wisdom and expert knowledge would. If it was a medicine, you would, perhaps imagine a warm, encouraging and supporting medical professional, somebody that you respect and perceive as being credible. I typically communicated with myself as if I had the wisdom of someone I respect greatly that was telling me this about the coffee and the effect, and saying that this was really good for me, that placebo was powerful, and and was kind of communicating it with a smile, talking genuinely and warmly. So some people may even imagine a barista, whatever is likeliest to convince you. So you then imagine the placebo there in detail in front of you, while that expert, the warm manner, describes all of it in detail. I often imagine the coffee in my espresso cup, placed on top of its small saucer, with the dark hot coffee inside it, sort of steam coming off the top. I remind myself at that point of its positive effects and really believe in it. That is, just kind of assume the effects that it's going to give, and then develop a real sense of expectation about it and felt positive anticipation. So the idea with the expectation is that it's non-volitional. That is, that it's just going to happen automatically. I just know it to be my truth. It's a believed in imagining, So you tell yourself that as you imagine it all the time, you go deeper into the hypnotic experience, you become more absorbed in it, and you let it kind of deepen your experience of hypnosis as you imagine it. And you take a bit of time to really embellish the scene and that it's there. Then you move on to the next step, which is this fourth step, I think. The fourth step is that you consume it. You take your placebo, you imagine taking the placebo. So for me, initially, that meant actually drinking the decaf coffee. Like I said earlier, experimentally, and eventually I moved on to just imagining drinking it. However, I do really enjoy the taste and the experience. And so today I continue to drink the decaf made on the stovetop Bialetti pot. I find the ritual thoroughly enjoyable, that break in my day. And I did experiment greatly with doing it with pure hypnotic suggestions and belief. And that practice enhanced my current experience for sure, which is a wonderful one. So first I would smell it. Imagine smelling it and really notice the smell and draw upon the smell that I was very familiar with and anticipate the taste and the ensuing sensations. Anosmia is something that's been used in hypnotic suggestion testing a great deal with certain Stanford hypnotizability scales and similar ones. For example, waving a strong scent under the nose and asking the person to not be able to recognize it. And then vice versa, giving somebody something that has no scent to it and asking them to imagine that scent being there whilst hypnotized and receiving hypnotic suggestions to that effect has been something used, readily in hypnosis. And so, even if you don't have the aroma there and present, I'm absolutely imagining it. And I spent lots of time really being mindful of the smell, the real aroma, and spending some time actually doing that process with a real awareness and a real mindfulness to really experience the qualities of it, so that in complete absence of that, I'd be able to draw upon that experience. So you then imagine the taste before actually drinking the coffee. I'd be aware of the taste. I love the bitterness of strong coffee and really drew upon my resources of that. So I made it all as vivid as I could and just engaged in that totally for a while. And that was the early stages of the process. And then, having had a few sips of the hot coffee, so for some of you that might just be imagined sips, for some of you that might be actual sips of hot decaf coffee, or anything else, that's going to represent the placebo and be the drink. I then imagined the coffee moving through the body, having a very notable effect, which is the cue to move on to the next step. And the fifth step then is to create the sensations and the outcomes of the placebo. So now it's been consumed, you start to believe and recognize the effects that you want and that you've designed previously. For me, it was imagining a lightness, a sharpness of thought, an uplifting, energizing, inspiring sense of well-being within me. I imagine parts of my brain lighting up. I notice very real sensations in my body, and I spend some time creating my effect in much more detail than I'm speaking about here. And with a real sort of focused sense of application, and really take some time on that. The tiniest of sensation that you first notice and recognize is something to then hone in on and imagine amplifying and really work on. So once I've done this diligently, it's then time to move on to the next step, the sixth step, which is using one's cognitions to kind of reinforce belief with the hypnotic mindset. And so here, what you're doing is you're simply advancing the positive cognitive set that I was speaking about previously. You adopt a mindset that expects the outcome to happen. That just knows the effect is going to occur. That is, you're motivated and you start to adopt the role of someone who has that effect. You're not trying to make it happen. You just assume it's happened. It's done. So you use positive cognitions and repeat them over and over to yourself, then saying them with belief and expectation. So I just know this is working. Or to be even more specific, I feel and enjoy the very real effects of my coffee. So you choose what suits you and what's right for you, and you say it over and over like you really believe it to be the truth, and so on. And I think that's really important. And this idea of being quite, expecting it to happen. I can't labor that enough. I realize I probably have labored that point quite a lot, but I'm expecting it to happen, and just knowing that it's happening by itself is key to the mindset. So then be really appreciative of yourself. Enjoy that about yourself, that you did this, that you created your reality, and exit hypnosis, the final step. If you use any of the protocols that I show in my books or free resources, you count yourself up and out of the hypnosis experience 1 through to 5. Otherwise, you just open your eyes, wiggle your toes and fingers, and become oriented with the place that you're in. And having done this a few times in self-hypnosis, and the exact number of times is going to depend upon you and how many sessions you need to really feel a depth of belief in what you're doing, and until you start to really recognize the placebo effect happening. For me, it was very noticeable after a handful of sessions, 4 or 5 sessions, and from there I didn't need so much the full-blown sort of structured self-hypnosis sessions. So I then simply made the decaffeinated coffee in the same way, using the same things that I usually use, the Bialetti, the espresso cup, the quality, coffee, a medium ground, albeit decaf, all done on the stovetop, and then immediately prior to drinking it, I adopt the hypnotic mindset, remind myself of the effect that the coffee is going to have. I have a very deliberate expectation that I've trained within myself of what it can do, what it will do. And the results have been spectacular. My coffee gives me energy, liveliness, and the thrill that decaffeinated, that caffeinated coffee used to give. And I feel incredibly productive as a result of drinking it. However, I get none of the anxiety, none of the restlessness, none of the kind of twitchy edginess that I used to get from regular coffee. And I sleep like a baby every night. And sleep's incredibly important to me, especially as I've got older. My ability to train hard at the gym relies upon it. Being productive at work and with my studies, being able to make good choices and decisions. So it's been wonderful for me. And if you're one of those people who struggles with caffeine, I hope that it works in the same way or a similar way for you. There's a great deal of flexibility within the way that you get to do this, and hopefully I've demonstrated that. but hopefully there's enough here for you to develop your own preferences, your own belief and your expectations. Absolutely key. So convince yourself, create a believed in imagining, and you may be amazed at what it is that you're capable of. So thanks for tuning in. That's it for this particular edition. Here, I'll do, this is actually an empty cup at the moment. I brought it in with the aim of illustrating. And I was going to do a classic cheers at the end and maybe do a thumbs up to the guy in the back. Do subscribe to this channel to get notifications of my latest videos as they happen. Do go visit the college website for details of upcoming classroom-based courses and all our online courses on hypnotherapy, self-hypnosis, and I send you my very best wishes. Goodbye for now.